We would like to start our last session for today, except for the closing. And that's our traditional career panel. And I'm excited to welcome on stage with me this time my WiDS co-organizers. And I will talk a little bit about the topic, and you'll see why we are doing it this time. And my partner, long-term partner in crime, Sahar Asadi, who is an AI research lead at King. Celine Xu, who's the lead data scientist at H&M, and Danylenko, who is a machine learning engineering manager at Spotify. And all of them have experience from many different places and many different companies. And 1 second, we need to get Celine in over here before we continue this. All right, excellent. Celine, give us your video.
Yes.
All right, sounds good. So anyway, the topic of the panel is organizational smörgåsbord of data roles. And I think all of you know is that in the data area, we have many different titles. We asked you about this earlier today, but also things change very quickly with the years. So when we started Women in Data Science 5 years ago, we had a career panel and we were already talking about roles like data scientist and machine learning engineer and data analyst. And we had a discussion about it in our first career panel. And at the same time, a few years later, things changed a lot. So many data analysts were called data scientists at this point, and a lot of the definition machine learning engineers were doing slightly different things. And it's an evergreen topic, I would say, and it's something that we would like to really address today. And also, that's a reason why instead of just calling ourselves Women in Data Science Sweden, we now call ourselves Women in Data Science AI and ML Sweden. I think it would be fair to say the original organizers, all of us, were doing more machine learning. And then we started being asked a lot more, you're in data science, you're doing data analytics. Well, not quite. We would really like to keep it to a broad umbrella. I think it's a very interesting area. It's very important to make it more diverse, which is why all of you are here. And I think these are the topics that we would like to discuss today. And to start with, I'm going to go and ask these amazing ladies about how it works in their organizations, in their companies. What different roles you have in your organizations, and what do they mean? And Tonya, would you like to start?
Yes. Thank you, Galina. So I work at Spotify, and currently we have different types of roles that are working with data. We have data scientists, we have machine learning engineers, we have research scientists, we have data engineers, and basically, I think we have pretty good separation of concerns between the roles. Of course, they are overlapping, which should be. However, otherwise, I think each role kind of knows what to do in the company. So, for instance, data scientists are working mostly with data analysis and understanding of the product and of the metric and KPI. Also working with A/B tests and causal inference. So they really try to enforce what is the next step for the product to take, or what is the next step for the company to take, or why certain things happen, and because of what they happened. While machine learning engineers work mostly with machine learning models and the engineering of these models and putting these models into production. Data engineers are working with data processing, helping out. Some data engineers help out machine learning engineers to process the data and build the pipelines to power the model itself. Some data engineers working only with data engineering tasks for different golden data sets for different products, data products. I think that's, and research scientists, yes, work with applied research. So they mostly focus in a tech research area where they, of course, inform the future move of the company by doing maybe some kind of ad hoc projects and experiments, but they also become a part of the product area when they are needed to help the product to solve a certain challenge in a smarter way.
Thank you very much. Celine, how does it work at the H&M?
Yes, I would say we all sit in a big organization called Business Tech, which we combine the business, data, analytic, and IT together. And we have different roles, not as sophisticated as King and Spotify, but we also have a data scientist, data analyst, data specialist, data engineer, machine learning engineer, DevOps engineer, and a business expert. So we also have like UX designer, product owner, and each of us work in this cross-functional team. So I would say we try our best to make closer to the business and solve the business problem and leverage AI or machine learning's capability.
Thank you. What about King, Sahar? What kind of setup do you have at a gaming company like this?
I think worth mentioning that, like, if you think about the King compared to Spotify, King has several different products. So each game looks like a small startup itself. So they have their own organization. There's a commonality between the organization of each game, but also, like, there's a lot of focus in interaction between data scientists or data work within each games. So we have both central and decentralized setup. So most of our data scientists, they are part of game teams. Some of them, they work closely with product understanding and user understanding, looking at causal effects and A/B testing. They also might work a lot on, like, building their own tools. And some of them, they spend some time on building some exploratory models to understand the users. Then we also have central teams for data scientists. So, like, for instance, we have this analytics tech and tools, where data scientists together with developers, they work on building tools for data science. And then we have data warehouse teams where data engineers, they are mostly there and building primary data sets. Then we also have machine learning engineers, but they are, like, a smaller group compared to data scientists, which mostly they are centralized. So including in my team, where we do ML ops, where we do ML research, and we also have some data scientists and data engineers in our team. So it's a combo.
I think Luminita is asking, so how does a typical look like? How many people and which competences? Should I assume a typical team?
That is a
Yes.
difficult question, because we don't really have a typical team, right? So if you look at where in the company you are, then you get different answers. So in a central team, you get like a more focused. So most of the people are focused on, let's say, machine learning and data science and data engineering. So you have all the competences, because your product is a platform or a solution that will be used by the rest of the company. And then if you go to non-central teams, like where data functions are closer to products, then data scientist or machine learning engineer or data engineer will be integrated together with the other competences, which are focused on like, game development or, like, product even and design.
Yeah, makes sense. What about Spotify, Tonya? Because Spotify is a bigger company than King, I think. Is there kind of a more idea of what is typical for how data science is set up, or machine learning, or just different functions?
Yeah, because Spotify is so big, I don't know how it is set up in a in a mission that I'm not a part of, but I can talk about personalization mission that I'm a part of. So in personalization mission, we have a team called Product Insights and Central Insights, where most of the data scientists are working. Central Insights is the team that is doing a work that is kind of fueling the PZN mission way. And product insights, they are distributed over different product areas where they support product teams. So they are still centralized in their team, but they are kind of maybe not embed. Embed is a strong word, but they are kind of working very close with the product teams to help them to figure out if this is the right way to go for. And then the product teams, those that are working with machine learning, usually have a cross-functional team. So we have backend engineers in the team, front-end engineers in the team, machine learning engineers and data engineers working in the same team with the same product. And some teams are more heavy with machine learning engineers, where it's like, let's say, 6 machine learning engineers and maybe 1 backend. Some teams are more heavy towards backend, where it's more backend engineers and maybe a couple of machine learning engineers. So it depends on the product itself.
Very interesting. What about H&M, Celine?
Yeah, I would say maybe the setting in HM is a little bit simple. So in general, we have currently more than 60 data scientists are recruited globally and across 3 different domains. From we call it sourcing and production, which is responsible for plan the manufacturing, sourcing the material, produce the product, do the quality checking, and so on and so forth. Then the second domain called customer fulfillment, responsible for all the logistic, which is the logistic between the warehouse to the stores. And the third domain is customer, is our biggest domain. And within this domain, we separate into different business area. Some domain have really small, like 3 area, but like customer domain, we have at least 15 different business area. In this, like within this space, I would say all our team are product driven, which means based on a certain solution, we organize a team around that. The people can be 8 to 25 people. It depends on the size and the product. And we are truly cross-function, including all the data scientists, data engineer, machine learning engineer, and we incorporate everyone. One more thing I want to mention is in HM, we also have 3 different type of team. One is we call it execution team, which is doing the scale up for all the production to support the business. The other team, we actually have a research team cooperate with the university to do some research, which is really far away from business. At the same time, we also have an exploration team, which is we actually constantly try to find the low-hanging fruit or not so satisfaction place in the business and try to do some examination and compose some new experiment, try out the new technology to help the whole business.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think it's I would just comment that I think it's important which stage of the data and machine learning, or AI as we call it these days, journey a company is. That's where you're at. And I think H&M did a bit of a journey over the years, right? Because, you know, it was a different conversations we were having about it 5 years ago compared to now. It's very interesting to see how it moves on. And it's very cool to see also. And it's the same thing, I think, for King and Spotify. Before we go forward, because Sahar is here, I'm going to ask a question actually about there are more companies these days that have an AI research team. Are there, you know, a few words that you would like to say about what maybe aspirationally what works and what doesn't work, like what would be an ideal setup, when should people have an AI research team, and what they should be doing, and what kind of people they should have?
Yeah, that's a tricky question and a very good one. The thing is that I mean, the answer to this question depends on the size of the company and the type of product that the company offers. So some of the products can exist without or can survive without having a fancy AI solution. Like, you know, gamings are an example of that, or like, you know, maybe like retail is an example of that. So with that, but if you have a company that is building recommender systems, or the end product is a computer vision solution, then, like, you know, you really need researchers from the beginning. So in the setup that we are, where we have a product, and then it's important, in order to be able to have a research team, you need to integrate in the vision of the research that is about applied research. And part of the research work, the team's work, is on delivering two products, and part of it is also doing long-term exploratory research. So we need to have impacts, like, you know, short-term impacts and both long-term impacts, because the company cannot afford having, like, you know, just exploratory work. Maybe in size of Spotify
sitting around.
Yeah, maybe in Spotify share tech research of Spotify is a different scenario. Tonya can tell more. What kind of skill sets we have in the team? So data science, machine learning engineer, and research, machine learning researcher. So it's the kind of skill sets that we are looking for. I think it's important to make sure that we have all the combination. And then we also have the luxury of collaborating closely with an ML operation team, which helps us with a lot of toolings and platforming that we don't need to deal with.
And thank you, Sahar. And I think this is another question that I would like to ask, but maybe I'll go with audience questions first, and then we could touch on MLOps, because that's the hot topic these days, and that's something that that needs to be discussed. One question was, who takes care of the data quality throughout its life cycle? How data quality works in your companies? Tonya, would you like to take this one? Take one for the personalization team.
Yes, thank you. So that is a very good question, because the data quality struggles everywhere. And in Spotify, I think the company is in a quite good place with data quality, because there is an approach called the creation of a golden data set. So this is kind of a core data sets in the company that are used by different teams, and the quality of this data is important. So there are special teams sometimes dedicated to having these golden data sets clean and clear and understandable, and they also take care that it's always available, so there are no failures kind of the data pipelines going to these data sets and out of this data set. And then when we talk about data quality of let's say data coming to the machine learning model, then of course we trust the golden data sets and teams that are handling those. And then usually this data transforms through several teams. Let's say when certain data is added, certain data is removed. And then they come to the team that is kind of processing for features. Of course, the best approach is to actually connect to golden data sets directly and not going through other teams, so you can at least guarantee the quality on the output of the data set. And then inside the team, machine learning engineers and data engineers take care of the quality of the data coming to the machine learning model, where we create different checkpoints and part of like also the part of the model itself to check if the distribution of variables that are coming to the model is stable and the data is not missing, and it works basically.
Yeah, interesting. So I've done a little bit of work at Spotify maybe 6 years ago now, 7 years ago now, feels like, and there was a lot of spaghetti of data pipelines at the time. Would you say that there was a lot of work that basically happened since then to kind of minimize like there were no golden data sets at the time, and I will say that it's really impressive that you guys have this now. It's non-trivial to build it up afterwards, and yeah, it's a lot of work. What about H&M and King? How do you deal with data quality, and who takes care of it, and what kind of problems do you guys have with it? Celine?
Okay. I was thinking H&M is like relatively behind, I would say, the tech original business. So I was thinking Sahar could answer first, but yeah. So
you can arrange it,
say,
you know?
Yeah. In our organization, it's really depend on different things. One is what's the definition of the data quality? It's including different type. If this is the missing data, it's always linked to the data source and it's responsible for someone else. If that is related to the validation, and the business will get in. At the same time, if that is the pure model thing, then the data engineer, data scientist, or machine learning engineer will involved in. And the second thing is, I would say, in current situation in H&M, we have a data foundation. We don't have golden data set, but we try to get the most reusable data into an data lake that every team able to use. So in that sense, currently, it is the data foundation team and data engineer to maintain most of part of the so-called data quality. However, I still challenge my team or the data scientists. They need to also take initiative to always challenge whether or not they use the right data. It's always based on what problem you're solving. So sometimes it's not really missing data is really the trouble. It's actually whether or not use the unbiased, right representative, right feature data. So yeah, I would say everyone take care of the data quality.
Yeah. It's a team effort, huh? What about King?
I think it's kind of. I would like to build on what Celine said. I think there are core data sets that is needed to be taken care of, but then there are also like responsibility for everyone that they are responsible for making sure that they are using the right data, and the data is has a good quality when they're building models, for instance, or deploying the models. They need to be reliable. But there are a couple of things. So I mean, we have several teams that are responsible for data. So there are teams that they are taking care of the data that comes in, the raw data, stream data, and like they are teams that they take care of our cloud data and making sure that the data comes from users are collected without interruptions. And then there are data sets that are built for business and for analysis of A/B tests, and those data models are built and taken care of by central teams, and that they are doing data warehousing. but when you think about machine learning, now that we need to handshake with a lot of different teams, right? When we do research, we start looking at some of these data sets. We build new features, and if those features are important and we think that they are going to be used by the rest of the company, or this model is going to be in product, then we start talking to those core teams so that they can add them to data models and take care of those, so that we don't own those data sets. We also are talking about having feature store, so that those type of data, which is like, post-processing of the raw data, we would like to have them commonly available for the teams to be able to build their models.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. There's been a lot more push towards feature stores, whereas I think 4 or 5 years ago we talked about storing raw data and having like the true, like one true source. I'm sorry, it's getting late. What did we used to call it? One true source of data. No,
Truth. True source of truth.
Yeah.
True source of truth, something like this. Clearly. And then I always found it really interesting, because to me the raw data, that's nice, but really maybe you kind of want to reprocess it just a little bit. Like for example, for user logs, maybe you want to figure out which country they came from, and in such a way that people wouldn't just be going off and using different IP to geo libraries, that there would only be one that is used, and it would just directly be applied, so we would always get the same geographic analysis. So I'm actually really happy to see that there's a bit more of a push happening toward something like feature stores. But
maybe just one thing to add to cover the answer to the question in the chat. One thing that, when I used to be at the Spotify, I liked was a data catalog. So a library where, like, you see where you have tagged that all data sets where they come from, and then, like, if they have, like, they are certified based on their quality. And then you could realize that if this is a good quality data and is well maintained, and what are, like, what's the definition of each of those variables that you have in your data. So that is something nice. If the company starts building from, like, properly, I would say that I would go for such a thing.
Earlier than later, huh?
I agree with that, because it's so much time goes into finding out what exactly the data mean. What do you need? Like, if you want to minimize this time, you want to put this time to something useful and not for a search of the needed data. And I think what else Spotify does pretty well is that we have this product area called PZN platform, or personalizational platform, where actually all embeddings that are coming from different models are, which means that they are also platformerized in the end, and the teams don't need to retrain embeddings for, let's say, podcasts or for music. They can reuse these embeddings from other teams directly. So there is no need to redevelop the wheel, and the embeddings that are mostly used end up in this platform data sets that all other teams that are building machine models on top of it can reuse.
Oh, that sounds fantastic, actually. That sounds very convenient. We have a few more questions, but I would like to, or maybe it fits with the rest of what we were just discussing. So there's a question for the panel or for the audience, Wake Up audience. In your organizations with a variety of different data roles and overlaps, sometimes in the work you do, what do you think are the most important qualities of the tools or products you use to do your work? How do you kind of like, and we dived a little bit into this, but would one of you like to comment a little bit more?
Go for it, Celine.
So I think from my perspective, it's a little naive. It's really not about any tool or any platform or anything. It's really about the environment. So two things, I think. The first one is, I would say, the safe environment, which means you can openly discuss everything you actually doubt about. At the same time, you allowed or you encouraged by make mistake. So there was a good sentence says there's no bad experiment. It's only good learning. And the second thing I think is really transparent and smooth, effective communication, because every tool, the reason you use them is for communication. So yeah, sorry for disappointing you.
It's all important stuff. It's a bit like when we were talked about data governance, and Maaret said, well, like 90% of data governance is about change management, and I think it gets back to this. I think at some point with technical management, you also realize that 80% of problems you have are people problems, not technical problems, right? But Sahar, what were you going to say?
So I wanted to go for a research dimension and say something that usually is not brought up in, like, this kind of panels and discussions. And the thing is that I think there are a lot. It's really good to have a standardized tools and technologies, but at the same time, like the whole technology is moving fast, and it's a lot of work for a data scientist and or a machine learning researcher to take care of all of, like, setting up their environment, making sure that whatever they're building is adapting to the product and to the platform, and that is there for deploying. So one of the things that I like and what we've been trying to push is to create sandboxes for research or for exploratory work that is similar to a production platform, but it's simplified in terms of dependencies, and it doesn't break because, like, you haven't updated or taken care of certain tech that has been updated in the production. So I would say what I really like is that the sandbox for research and for data scientists.
And I would like to add one more thing from my end, at least, is that I think any tools that allow sharing, that make it easier for me to add another person to this, whether it's a sandbox environment or a Jupyter notebook or something else, I think it's a total multiplier. It's just such a simple thing, but it's still kind of unsolved in a lot of tools.
Yeah, and these sandboxes, I mean, they can include like notebooks and a lot of different things. The good thing is that it makes it easy for others also to try out what you have been exploring.
Tonya?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on everything that Sahar and Celine said. So to be honest, before joining Spotify, I thought that the tools do not matter that much. Like, the most important that the kind of the output is great, and so on, and everyone should be free to use whatever they like as long as the result is great. But now, to be honest, I changed my mind. Looking at the amount of people working in the company, I think if we would have people working in whatever tools they like, it's going to be a zoo. No one would understand anything between the roles, would not be able to share the knowledge, would not be able to collaborate in any way. And we know that the number of tools is it's enormous, and it's growing every day. And every tool is better than the previous one. And we have like early adopters that jump into these tools. We have late adopters that prefer to have like assembler coding. So we kind of all different. So that's why now I'm advocate for a minimal set of a standard tooling. So, for instance, data engineers are working with this tool, like let's say Scala. They use Scala, and then they use concrete tools for scheduling pipelines and cleaning the data. Then we have, let's say, machine learning engineers that mostly use Python, for instance. But they also need to have a little bit knowledge of Scala because they need to take care of their own pipelines and also backend. Yes.
Can I ask you a question? But then machine learning engineers, now we get into PyTorch, TensorFlow, like which
there should be like, again, it's like I can see in Spotify, it's standardized as well. Like, people use the same platform for everyone, which makes things much easier. Like, anyone from one team can go to another team and say, and collaborate with them or embed with them. Same comes to researchers. They kind of work with maybe different tools, but then they don't need to adapt to every team separately. Like, let's say they work with the tools that they like to do research or exploration, and then they come with this data and say, I would like to try it, I would like to try it approach with your product team. And if different product teams would use different tools, then this poor researcher would have to kind of adapt to every team separately and learn all the time new tools. Instead, we have this specific set of tools which are quite commonly used. It's easier to find people that know these tools.
Easier
It's
to
easier to share
maintain.
knowledge. Exactly. And then everyone kind of can work. If you know these 4 tools, then you can collaborate with any roles you like: machine learning engineers, data scientists, data engineers, research.
I would also say that it's been a bit of a shift, I would probably say. But at this point, when I see companies that say, "Oh, anybody can use anything," we have R and we have Python and we have something else, I start getting a little bit concerned. And there's additional side effect that is more organizational. Also, there's fewer tools you have, then you can build up training for and onboarding for those tools, and with the data sets that you have and with really good libraries, and it would be maintainable and stuff like this. I think it really makes organizational difference from many different sides.
Exactly. But at the same time, I think that's it also about the maturity, or not that maturity maybe, but about the company itself. Like, I can understand when, for example, smaller companies, startup companies try to use the most advanced tools, because might be that these tools are simpler, might be that they actually better than our old tools. But when the company grows, it becomes much harder to kind of keep up with new technology and find people on these roles. So I think it's also about the stages and the growth of the company itself.
I think the two things are also a little bit orthogonal. Like, you can make a decision and say, we are a company that uses Python, or we are a company that uses R. There's all old tools, but then there's also which tools do we have? One tool which do we use a new shiny thing for scheduling pipelines or something, or like there are reasons to experiment one way or another. But as we are talking about this, I would actually like to cover the question of MLOps. So MLOps is, and audience, put a thumbs up on the emoji if you've heard of MLOps and you feel like you understand what they do. Let's see what kind of other emojis we have. Put a sunglasses if you're still not quite sure what the MLOps do. Okay, we have a little bit of both. I have to say, I have some idea what I think MLOps are. I'm not convinced it's the same idea everybody else has. So let's discuss. Sahar, I would like to start with you. What do you think MLOps do?
I have different, like, two answers. One is that
no, you're supposed to have one answer.
it's DevOps, but so depending on who is, like, our audience, right? So if we have, like, software developers, is DevOps but for machine learning. If we are talking about machine learning people here, or data scientists, I would say machine learning engineers with some backend experience. So that's the two answers that I have. But honestly, so I think I kind of mentioned is we have a lot of tools. There are a lot of platforms related to applying machine learning, and an MLOps engineer is there to help building these pipelines around how to operationalize a model. So let's say you have a model, you have your data in place, you have your model in place, and then how you can take it to train it, to deploy it, to serve it, to monitor it, to schedule things, and how you can optimize it, and how you can have common architecture for orchestrating your modeling operations. So it becomes like, in the past, maybe it was a job. That's why I said, like, I have two answers: DevOps and machine learning engineer. It was a job that either of them or even a data scientist would do. But now that, like, there are more models, there are more variations of technologies, and then there are like larger amount of models in production, then it makes sense to have this new role there.
Celine, do you have a bit of insight into this that you would like to comment on?
I have some like personal understanding. I trade ML op is actually a cycle. So any work actually relate to the data prep, EDA, development, monitoring, retrain, and so on and so forth, and review, it should be included in this op cycle. In H&M, now we don't have specifically setting the ML role, but I would say if we talk about the job itself, then we have a machine learning engineer, we have DevOps engineer to help with both. At the same time, we also have a platform team, try to build up a platform or say integrate a platform to help the quick prototyping and deployment of the scalable model. So yeah, sorry, I didn't answer your question actually.
No, it's interesting, and I think this is also reflective. So H&M, and I don't want to say less mature because it's just like these words shouldn't be said about a company like H&M, if you see what I mean. But like you guys haven't grown into this. Like in 2 or 3 years, I bet I will talk to you and you will have some MLOps doing some stuff. So it's kind of interesting.
We will say we are more practical, and also we are retail based, or instead of the technical nature, we are retail nature. So
yeah, it's very interesting. So at Spotify, do you guys have at this point MLOps engineer, or are you kind of like, what do you, how do you solve these problems? And also, if I may say, I think one thing to address is machine learning engineer, MLOps, like how much of an intersection and where do things fall these days?
That's an excellent question. So before, and I think it's not before, but even now, a lot of machine learning engineers are doing MLOps. Like they are people that decide how to put the model into production, how to build a monitoring functionality around it, what to use as a platform, as we covered in the previous discussion, like PyTorch or TensorFlow or something else. Is it Python or Java or anything else? So I would say I would still believe that the majority of ML engineers are doing ML ops, maybe 50% of their time, even if it's not more. And again, it comes to the size of the company and understanding of where the time of machine learning engineers should go to. So I think in Spotify, for instance, what I really like that machine learning engineers are not far away from ML operations. They know what they're using. They know how to handle it. They themselves build the monitoring functions around their models or checking the data that are coming to the models together with the backend engineers in the teams. However, we have a team that is taking care of ML platform itself. So the team that builds the platform and builds libraries around the platform so that ML engineers could simply use it in their everyday work. So they don't need to redevelop the wheel. They don't need to take care of unhandled exceptions that are coming. They could always kind of refer if something doesn't work and after several tries it still doesn't work. They can always refer to this tip and ask, hey, this doesn't work and I tried this and this. Did you do any update, or what should I do with this library, for instance? However, as I said, and I think people are not called MLOps. I might be wrong, but I think it's majority are software engineers working with machine learning systems. That's kind of the role. And then machine learning engineers are taking trainings from this platform to understand what they're using, how to take care of the platform, how to use the platform, what are the new updates in the platform that they could incorporate. And every team is different still in Spotify. Some people are kind of on the edge of advances. So everything that the platform is delivering, they're using the first. Some teams are more like still doing something quite simple and just started to onboard on this platform. Some people are in the middle of a kind of cycle in the platform, so still it's different.
Thank you very much, Tonya. We have a few minutes left, and I would like actually for us to address something that comes up a lot. I think it's fair enough to say that our field is very popular and very confusing. I think the only more confusing field is probably UX. And now we're discussing this totally like eye-watering amount of different roles, and new roles pop up every year, all right? Is there any advice you have for people who would like to enter the field, whether from many different majors, because data scientists come from many different areas usually, and then kind of like become data scientists, or whether from people who are students and are going to graduate from school, whether with computer science major or something else? What would your advice be right now, today, on navigating this smorgasbord of data roles? Somebody's going to raise. I see Sahar smiling, and Sahar is going to start, I think.
Okay, so I want to first mention one thing, is that like, just don't think about that you need to have data science or machine learning background or computer science background. There are actually, like, emerging roles like PM or product manager for machine learning. So there are even these roles that are like more specific that will show up. So don't limit yourself based on your background. And if you are within the, if you are about to start and go to the field, then I would suggest like take some basic courses of machine learning and data science, both of them, and do a couple of like go through of like couple of simple projects, because it gives you some insights to answer questions during the interviews. And if you are in the field and you want to transition, so I was saying like, software engineers are easily switching to ML ops, or machine learning engineering to data science, and the other way around, right? So you don't need to be in that role to apply for, let's say, like you are data scientist and then you apply for senior machine learning engineer as your next role. It just depends on like, what you have been doing and what's the job specification for that particular company.
Yeah, and I think Tonya, would you like to? Yeah.
I agree with Sahar. I think when you come from the university, there are plenty of roles one can take. The most important maybe is to understand what exactly company is looking for, so you don't end up in a situation when certain things do not exist and you are in a bad position of being a unicorn and about everything, and then you burn out and frustrated and you don't know what to do. So I would say that it's just understanding what is needed in the company, and if your education is partly aligned with what they're looking for. And then it's all about, as Sahar said, it's all about what type of work you do. For example, today we had a talk from Zalando, and I think Zalando has a lot of applied researchers or data scientists that actually do machine learning, and most of their work is machine learning. So of course, now we shouldn't care about how the role is named, and it's about your knowledge, your education, your experience.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to repeat an important thing. We usually say at every single conference, but if you're entering the field for the first time, do not join as a first data scientist or machine learning anything anywhere. Make sure there's already a team. Because if you're fresh out of school and you're the first person they're hiring, it's Yeah, looking probably for a unicorn, and you're not that unicorn, and you don't want to be in this position. The other thing I'm going to mention, and it came from our preparation for the panel, we won't have time for this, unfortunately, but there's a lot more differentiation in the field that is happening right now compared to 5 years ago. And remember that it's not unlikely that whatever you start doing now, you will be doing more of it over the years. I'm not sure that used to be exactly this way. You can still learn other stuff and switch, but I think there's more specialization happening, whether it's working on like neural networks or working on certain types on reinforcement learning, or a certain type of data analytics or something. Anyway, and before we go, because we have to wrap up, go to a wrap up, but Celine, last word to you. Any words of wisdom?
Thank you. I think 3 things add on. First, I think it's a problem-solving capability, which you actually dare and know how to criticize, challenge the assumption, and solve the problem. The second one is actually focus on the test. There are no right or wrong answer for any solution. Only when you test whether or not they have a good performance or bad performance. So really nice to focus on test everything you're actually doing. The last but not least, I think knowing data is actually more important than actually able to coding. But of course, specifically, the coding skills also needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Sahar, Tonya, and Celine, my partners in crime again. Women in data science wouldn't happen without you, and without several other people that we're going to go into our closing session. And I hope to get the opportunity to thank them all.